right, welcome. So yeah, not a hangout, quick upload. So, hello, can you hear me? Not a hangout, quick upload. Anyway, so wanted to say a few things about cranky science. Okay, so uh, my first experience really that I remember with this stuff is my junior and senior year of high school. I went out west. I was living in Colorado, and I got a job at NASA Ames Research Center, a summer job. And this was before the time people had email. There was email there. They used a digital network. Some businesses used it, and a lot of people used an IBM network, but didn't properly have access to the internet. But so anyway, I just want to talk real quick about this. So yeah, so people would write letters and mail them in the regular mail, and some of the scientists, many of them at NASA would have post these letters sometimes on their bulletin boards. A lot of times scientists have bulletin boards or their posters and whiteboard or something out front. And they like to put cartoons and stuff up. And this was one of the things they'd put up. And they would be these screeds, mixes between variously detailed systems, generally not particularly following any empirical rigors of science and the logical systems. People figured out it must work. Somebody's job to prove it, mixed with a screed of crankiness against like the scientific establishment, how unfair, and just how they're assholes and retards, and they're just a cabal, and it's all popularity and stuff. And it's interesting, the screed of insults plus, the part of the letter is also, and let me tell you about my system. But it's like a compulsion to share these systems, and they're always logical, and there's not proof. And there's some truth to popularity. There is ways in science, even the physical sciences, for popularity to be used to create a career for someone. However, if you have a whole new physical system, or like some of these people, mostly these are charlatans more than cranks, but it's a mixture, free energy ideas. And I'm sorry, but that's just fucking nuts for various reasons. If you have a device that can like pull 0-point energy out of a magnet or something, then by all means, just share the design with me, because popularity games aside, with something like that, you could give it to me, and I can take it to a local community college and start a process by which not only will you be accepted by the scientific establishment, but we'll all make $1 billion. So I think, things that are testable in the real world ought to be tested. Most people don't understand science. As a cultural phenomenon, they don't really get it. And science is far from pristine, and I've worked in science. I continued to work at NASA through school, and then astronomy department at the school I went to as a programmer. And then my job before starting this contracting, I worked 12 years at a astronomy center, basically. And so, it's not pristine, but, there are rules of proof that you can use to prove things to people. And it's not that hard to get a hearing for something important compared to how demonstrable it is. Like a free energy device would be easy. You just spend all the time. Nobody's going to want to, no scientist is going to help you build it. But if it's such a good idea and you can demonstrate it and you build it, and all you have to do is go in and show somebody it's generating energy with no battery or any other energy source in it, they will become convinced. So anyway, this phenomena continued through that entire period. People post them less on their bulletin boards anymore, because you can just go online and find these kinds of theories. Now, I make a hobby of following such theories, and always have since those days when I was 16 and I first noticed the phenomena. I really like the intricacy, and they're like artworks, and often they're less like scientific or mathematical theories than they are like, let's say somebody got a piece of butcher paper and doodled on it for 30 years until all the doodles smoothly fit together with the ones next to them. It's like a Where's Waldo of abstraction. Rarely do the people understand what their system really is about. Generally, they're reactive to weird things, and they usually rely on the idea that uh, if something seems paradoxical in the world, there's a problem with the world. And the paradox is really just that you're not accepting the idea that in which this reality would not seem paradoxical. The world's not paradoxical. Your understanding of the world is where paradox comes in. I think we figured that out. Welcome to the 21st century. So one of these guys, it's really a crank pot, like totally worthless even to talk about science. Because see, I like these kinds of systems. Is this guy BGaede, or maybe it's Gaede? So I put a link in there. A guy that I like, whose system might even be just compatible, but he has his own theory of interpretation, like an alternate, an artistic model, he calls it, that fits with the mathematical model. And I don't see him going out of his way to be in denial of the current system. It's not like a lot of these people have a sort of not invented here look to their theories. It's just like, well, I had to invent it. And his isn't. And I put a link to him too. And I forget his name because he changed his name on his account to an artist theory of space-time or something like that. And then there's Gary, who, you know, when I first arguments with Gary, I think the first time he blocked me was when he talked about, you know, an object going near the speed of light, sending off an object at the speed of light, and that going twice the speed of light. And that's just, you know, it's obviously not how it works. I think he knows now. And he got mad. But that was fine. We could discuss physics and our own interpretations of the evidence of reality. But, you know, now it's pointless for me to talk these crank theories with someone. And it is a crank theory if you're not going to adhere it in. Because, see, like, I apply this to myself. I have my own theory of space and time, and I've looked to where I could contribute. But when it comes to science, you know, there's a lot of learning. It's not a conclusion body of science. It's a body of fact that you don't get to just ignore. You have to take it into account. If it has an explanation and you have an alternate explanation, then you still have to go ahead and explain, you know, the data. You can replace that explanation. You can't just ignore the whole data like, well, our lying eyes must be to blame. Well, you can't say our lying eyes must be to blame, but then you have to explain why it looks this way. When, you know, again, I use the example of when the sun comes up, you can explain why it seems to come up, even though that when you claim, oh, that's not what's really going on. So, you know, Gary's theories just become kind of one of the kinds that's posted on, you know, people's board. Whereas, you know, my approach, I remember, so the youngest I remember really getting fascinated with physics as such as I was 8 years old, and I got a little pamphlet. I think it must have been written for, you know, 10-year-olds or something, who knows. And it was fascinating about momentum, and it was very formative for me, because not only did it talk about momentum, but it sort of acknowledged that we didn't know exactly what momentum was. Now we understood it in this terms of inertia and a property, kind of like, you know, and mass and inertia. But it also went through all the theories, you know, a bunch of theories anyway, that people had about momentum before momentum, like why do bodies keep moving, like the theory that you throw an object and it pushes the wind out and the wind whips around and hits in the back and keeps pushing it away, things like that. And it was real formative to me, because subsequent to that, I always looked at science, and indeed all knowledge, through this history of how people got it wrong, and the fact that we are in the middle of that process now, so we're wrong. And if you're going to guess how you're wrong now, knowing how you were wrong in the progression to how you got where you are now is perhaps more interesting and important than where you happen to be at the moment. Especially since science often requires taking a couple steps back, because you go down the wrong way. You go out, you know, try to solve Alzheimer's with this. It's like, no, okay, we're going to finally do these ideas we were ignoring. And then you do it. So, so I basically tried to learn as much science, and I learned about time dilation, used to read Omni and Science Digest and stuff. and I've kept up with science. And so, you know, my system of understanding is designed to fill in or create interpretations of the data, you know, not to just crankily complain they're not doing my idea or something or whatever, or to prejudge. You know, I like to make my guesses, like the quantum biology is going somewhere, as I did like 4 years ago, and it's shot off like a rocket. Oh, I was right. Well, that happens a lot because when I've been wrong, I go, oh, look, oh, I got that one wrong. Why was that? And I study that chain of events so that now I have a pretty good handle of where science is at and is going, you know, for a monkey. And and so my additional theory is this illusions exist theory, for example, probably is my most comprehensive theory of everything. And I'm looking at things in terms of information processing, you know, in a way that is going to borrow learning from physics or any other science, not try to ignore or contradict it. If something in science seems to be going some way, like some people think that the computers are getting more and more artificially intelligent, we're just going to hit it at some point and it'll be conscious. You know, I don't think that's going to happen, right? So I make my other predictions. But if it happens, then I'll go, oop, fair play, and I will incorporate the information that's been demonstrated to me. And that's what these crank systems don't do. That's what makes it a crank system. That's what makes it bad science. They do not incorporate successful arguments against them. They don't generally even acknowledge them. They use a lot of semantic arguments where we might not even have the terms to understand a phenomena that has only so recently been understood that throughout our evolution, we were not really exposed to it directly enough to comprehend it. We need new concepts to understand it. We need, like, it's not about is the universe random or not. It's no, we need a better understanding of randomness. You know, is probabilism the same as randomness? We need a better understanding and concept to have when we use the word, you know, probabilism, and it brings up a concept. That concept's not set in stone. We need, science is about improving those concepts. And so making these semantic arguments from the concepts that you got, that of 5,000-10,000-year-old words, it's like that's not going to go very far, and it leads to crackpot science that is cranky and not communicative. Because see, I like these systems. I like the art of them. I like science fiction. Often they're so intricate and hard work. You could at least make a weird Philip K. Dick novel out of it. I see value in their value that when I respect it, you know, the crank theorist is like, that's no, it's reality. It's not an artwork, things like that. And that was another one, that astrophotometry guy. And I told him I like the artwork of his thing, and people don't like that. But anyway, so if you're not going to integrate with the body of evidence that we're sharing about the world, and yes, you can reinterpret it, and sometimes those reinterpretations could be radical, but that's not the same as just ignoring it or not explaining it or saying, well, I have a whole different system and the math will work out. No, that's not how it works. You know, we could discuss physics and stuff, but not on that kind of basis. And that's the basis, you know, that's insisted upon in the bad science crankpot world. So that's my thoughts on that.